Jamie, pull up that thing on chimps.
Jamie, pull up that thing about how January 6th wasn't real. You got that one, Jamie?
Don't get me started on 9/11. It's an inside job.
Yeah, because the planes were inside the buildings.
from the beginning.
Jet fuel, steel beams, all I gotta say.
Controlled demolition.
Nobody ever saw it happen. Welcome
9/11
to...
9/11 is not a joke.
No, it's not.
It's not a good way to start off the podcast.
This might all get cut. Probably not, though.
Jamie, pull up that picture of, like, see if you could pull up one and see how many hairless chimps it had.
The one I just pulled up had 5 million.
5 million. Oh my God. Wow. We could pull it up.
Pull it up if you want. Look that shit up, Jamie. Pull that shit up, Jamie.
You see, you got a good picture? Pull it up so we can see. Are you bringing it up, Jamie? Jamie, I'm going to send it to you again. Put this up on the big screen.
Can you pull this up?
Well, you want to pull it up? Put that up.
Pull up that picture.
Pull it up.
Oh, yeah, pull it up. Welcome to the Perfect Movie Podcast, the podcast where we answer the question, is this a perfect movie? I'm Michael.
I'm Kalen.
And today we are celebrating Nick Cage-uary, or maybe have a happy Nick year. We're doing Nick Cage movies, just a couple, because we're nearing the end of January as our January theme. Today we will be doing a sci-fi film called Color Out of Space that came out in 2019. There's a lot of backstory to this movie, but before we get into that, maybe, I don't know, what did you think of Color Out of Space? Have you heard of this before? I know I've recommended it.
Definitely heard of this before. I'm pretty familiar with the author of the book that this is based on, H.P. Lovecraft. I have a lot of issues with this film. A lot of issues, actually. I think it's for an H.P. Lovecraft adaptation, it's about as good as it's probably going to get. It's kind of hard to adapt these stories, but
fundamentally unadaptable,
yes,
type of stories. So it was an interesting swing. Yeah, I've seen it twice now.
But that's also what they said about The Lord of the Rings, that it was unadaptable.
Well, that's different.
Yeah,
because it was about just how expansive
right
the text is. This is like Lovecraft is all about the unknown and like indescribable.
Right.
And it's like, how do you portray the indescribable in an image for everyone to see?
Speaking of Lord of the Rings, it was actually produced by Elijah Wood.
Yeah, this is Elijah Wood's production company. This is a pretty small budget film. It's about a $6 to $12 million budget. And is directed by a man named Richard Stanley. And Richard Stanley has a little bit of interesting backstory, which I'm going to get into right here. No, this was a New Line. Actually, also speaking of Lord of the Rings, about 1994, Richard Stanley was supposed to make a movie for New Line Cinemas, which went on to make Lord of the Rings. New Line Cinemas was kind of the indie horror mostly studio. I believe they'd produced Evil Dead. Their big franchise was Freddy Krueger franchise.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street. And Richard Stanley had made a couple like semi-hit. He was one of those like up and coming. He never made a big hit, but he had some buzz. People were interested in the horror movies he made. He had one called Hardware. I haven't seen any of his previous horror movies, but he was like kind of in this new wave of like really like over the top, kind of just grungy, disgusting horror stories. Richard Stanley, in this documentary, he describes his upbringing as, I was raised by a mother who was a witch, and her like crappy upbringing kind of like is responsible for all these like demented images that I bring to the screen. And he was gonna make this movie called an H.G. Wells adaptation called The Isle of Dr. Moreau, which is about like a guy that sort of a mad scientist goes to an island, and he's like doing all these experiments where he's turning like into like humanoid people. So there's like, pig people, dog people, all kinds of stuff. And then eventually the animals rebel. He's kind of like the god of this island, and they rebel, and then it descends into chaos in a more like Lord of the Flies scenario.
Okay.
In the second half. And like all the imagery and stuff for this was like really grotesque, and it was really like stuff where it seems like in the production process, the suits and all the overseers are kind of like, well, this is a little
How do we
much.
find an audience for this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as this thing moved on, it kind of ballooned in size and scope because Richard Stanley had a meeting with Marlon Brando that went really well, and Marlon Brando was kind of, they were sort of aligned, and he became the big name that sort of drew money into this thing. And then there was all kinds of casting stuff. For a minute, Bruce Willis was signed up to do it, and then he dropped out. Eventually, Val Kilmer signs on to be one of the other main parts. At a point, James Woods was supposed to be in it, but he also dropped out.
That would be interesting.
But by the end of the pre-production process, it's a movie that's shooting on location in Australia, and it has Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer as your primary stars. And it's supposed to be this, grotesque horror movie. And just like immediately things start going wrong. Marlon Brando's, I believe, daughter commits suicide, so he pushes back his arrival to the location. So like he doesn't arrive till later into production than they had already planned. Val Kilmer shows up and he wants his part cut down. He doesn't want to spend as much time there. And then he's just like getting into petty disagreements constantly. There's like this story where he's going to shoot a scene and Richard Stanley goes like, Val Kilmer asks Richard Stanley, like, so what's going on in the scene? He's like, yeah, so you're going to get bonked on the head, we're going to fade to black, and then you're going to wake up, somewhere else. And Val Kilmer's like, yeah, mate, that's not going to cut together. I don't think that's going to work.
Did he give a reason?
And Richard Stanley's like, this is like a classic trope, many movies have done this. I think it'll be fine. And Val Kilmer's like, nope. And it's just very clearly like a power struggle, and Val Kilmer's just came there to be like a dickhead. And like from the very start, he's like shooting the opening scene with the guy that's supposed to be his like sidekick and minion, and he's like, why does this guy have so many lines at the start of the movie? Shouldn't it be more about me? I want it to be more about me. Just typical like actor ego BS.
That sounds like a pain in the ass.
And then eventually Marlon Brando gets there and things intensify even further.
He shows up severely obese.
Well, he was already, this is post-apocalypse now, but he pulls the same thing where he's like, just wants to change the movie to fit whatever would be easiest for him, bring in all his ideas, which are mostly for his own comfort. He pretends they're for the movie, but it's for his own comfort. Like, he's like, I think I should wear this thing on my head all the time, this bucket on my head. And they're like, why? And he's like, because I want ice in it because my head keeps getting hot. Or like he shows up to a set and he's like, I think peacock feathers would be great. And so some like the director of whatever drives on a road, finds a road-killed peacock, pulls the feathers and brings them back for him over the course of like an hour.
What the hell?
All kinds of crazy shit. Richard Stanley ends up exiting the picture because like he's just kind of not able, he's a young director and he's not able to deal with these like egomaniac dickhead actors that got attached to this project. And then they bring in some veteran. This movie eventually comes out. There is an Island of Dr. Moreau movie under a different director's name. But even this veteran director that shows up is like, he has a quote that he yelled at the cast at some point. He was like, I wouldn't even cast Val Kilmer in a movie called The Story of Val Kilmer. Like, I'm so sick of dealing with this guy.
So I'm guessing the film didn't do so well.
Final film isn't great, and a lot of it got warped by especially Marlon Brando. Like, one guy's supposed to be his like underling sidekick, and they brought the world's smallest band came to set to play like one random creature. He's like this tiny Dominican man that's like 30 inches tall. And Marlon Brando just took a shine to him and was like, no, he's my sidekick now. So he has like a mini-me in the movie the whole time. And the whole thing just devolves into a completely different movie than what was Richard Stanley's original, like, this is going to be a gross, visceral, like, tale of, like, what is humanity really about and shit.
That would be incredibly frustrating.
So Richard Stanley went from being this like up and coming director to just like disappearing from making major motion pictures until Color Out of Space in 2019, which he also aligns with another kind of, I don't know if Nick Cage is an egomaniac, but definitely a massive
He's a character for
he's
sure.
a massive character, and he's going to bring his own energy and ideas to your movie.
Right.
But that's why we love him, and that's part of like this like Nick Cage revival.
Yeah.
We're going to do Raising Arizona next week, and that was like when Nick Cage was still just like an actor.
Still a young guy. Yeah.
But the Nick Cage revival, I think, has largely had to do with Nick Cage being able to take big swings and be bizarre.
I think it started with Mandy, which
Yeah.
came out a couple years before this
a,
film.
There's a movie, Joe, that I think was the beginning of this.
Okay.
I haven't seen Joe, but it was a more like serious return to action for him.
And then it was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and then that movie Pig.
Pig, yeah.
Yeah, so Nick Cage is kind of, like you were saying, he's in like a revival mode right now.
Yeah, and this is after there was like this interim period where Nick Cage was a big star in the 80s and 90s. Is like one of the biggest stars of the 90s. He gets a divorce, he loses a bunch of money, and then he shows up in just a bunch of the worst like straight to DVD movies.
Straight to Redbox kind of shit.
You've ever seen in like the early 2000s. Well, there's National Treasure. He's in National Treasure.
That's true.
But in between there's a bunch of like just the worst movies you've ever like thought of. Do you remember the movie where Nick Cage sees in the future like 60 seconds?
I don't think so.
I swear we watched this together. He like has the power of clairvoyance, but it doesn't go very far ahead. And there's this really funny action scene where he's like trying to escape a casino he's ripping off, and like he's like, oh, there's a guard that's gonna come around the corner, and it's just this corny like absolutely absurd action
I don't
scene.
remember that one.
Well, maybe it wasn't us, but it was not a good time because the movie sucked, but it's just a hilarious example of the work he was getting at the time.
But yeah, speaking of National Treasure, I think Nick Cage is a national treasure. That's why we chose this this month to kind of honor him. Let's jump into it. Starting off with the performance test.
It was the performance of a lifetime!
Obviously, Nicolas Cage. He's got a lot of funny lines in this. Like, unintentionally funny lines.
I don't know if it's unintentional. Listening to Richard Stanley talk in this documentary I watched in a couple interviews, I think he is in sort of like that Raimi mold where he's willing to be like combine grotesque horror and like over the top like madcap kind of like humor.
Okay.
Because Nick Cage made a particular choice in this. So early in the movie we hear him do an imitation of his abusive father.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
And that is the character he turns into as the Rock warps him.
And I understood that.
And
yeah.
that character is, I guess, an impression of his movie Vampire's Kiss, which I haven't seen. It's
Okay,
basically his character in Vampire's Kiss, and he just goes into that whenever he's sort of taken over by the color.
Because I thought he was doing a Donald Trump impression the entire time.
That's what it seems like.
It's exactly the same smell as the cancer ward where my father was. You know, death, disinfectant, the cancer smell, rotting milk. You know the smell. You know the cancer smell better than anybody. And now the dog has vanished off the face of the earth.
I told you
so
so.
connect those dots.
But yeah, Nick Cage, there's a long list of wild scenes involving Nick Cage.
I think my favorite scene, and this is why I say it was kind of unintentionally funny, but so the first time the meteor crashes and the sun kind of goes into shock or whatever, he's getting affected by this rock.
He just freezes.
And Nick Cage is like, you know, he's just sitting there, and the wife's like, we need to take him to the hospital. He's like, no, it's about an hour away. I think we're okay.
Yeah.
He was just like not concerned. And then he goes and pours himself some like cognac or something. It was hilarious, but...
And I also think there are some very bizarre decisions, and I think sometimes it's not executed well enough for it to get the point across. But a lot of the bad decisions made by characters in this movie, I think, is meant to be like they are already being affected by this energy emanating from this meteorite that crashes.
Right.
I don't think we've specifically said, but this is a story of like they have a homestead. There's a farm. It's an alpaca farm, which is hilarious. And they're kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's this family, Nick Cage and his family, and a meteorite crashes from space. It emanates this magenta color in the movie, but it's supposed to be this like
unrecognizable color that's not on the spectrum.
And it just starts warping everything, the people, the plants, the animals, and just like changing everything around it. If you've seen Annihilation...
Pretty much the blurb or whatever that was in that.
Yeah.
whatever they called that.
Yeah, it's very much the same as Annihilation. Annihilation is kind of a...
Annihilation was based on The Color Out of Space.
Yeah, it's kind of like a
unofficial H.P. Lovecraft.
It's a
adaptation.
H.P. Lovecraft cover,
Yeah,
basically.
and I think it's the best adaptation of an H.P. Lovecraft story.
For sure.
But yeah, Nick Cage is great in this. He's really great at just being maniacal, and especially towards the end, that's when things really ramp up and shit starts hitting the fan for real. And like you were saying, I think the most interesting aspect was kind of like this family not recognizing that they were going insane. They were just kind of going about their everyday, but they're just completely losing it. Like, I'm thinking of the scene when Nick Cage is grabbing some of the vegetables, like tomatoes, out of his garden, and they're all grotesque and ugly looking, but he thinks they're beautiful.
He mentions that they're like, oh, so soon, because they've like grown months too early.
Yeah.
Time is warping too. Things are acting weird.
And he sees peaches in the trees, like, peaches. And then he takes them into the kitchen. He's like washing them off, and then the wife comes down because I guess the internet's going out, and she's like, she works remotely, so she's on call with like these investors and stuff or whatever she does for her company. And then she's yelling at him, and he's yelling at her, and then he just starts biting all of the fruits or the vegetables and stuff, and he's just like, these taste like shit. Just like saying stuff. It's hilarious. And but I just really like the aspect of like these people don't know that they're going crazy and that they're being affected by this thing.
Yeah, and he just starts smashing the tomatoes in the sink, and he just goes like, slam dunk!
You know, I did everything I was supposed to do. I followed every fucking rule in the book. In the end, they still fucking taste like shit. So you know what? Fuck that. Okay, coming up. You know what? Okay, stop it. Stop it. Slam dunk.
So yeah, people are unwinding. The wife is played by Joelle Richardson, who is in another very Lovecraftian horror movie that we've done on this podcast. Do you know what it is? She's
I'm
in
blanking.
Event Horizon.
Oh yeah,
She's the one that makes it all the way to the end, that gets rescued. She like goes in the pod and gets rescued, quote unquote. Although, did she get rescued because they're still on the Event Horizon?
right.
So she's I guess if you want a Lovecraft horror woman, you go straight to her.
She's kind of got a weird face, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, she's interesting, although she gets sidelined pretty early in what's a very bizarre scene. I don't know, do we want to get right into... This is kind of a spoiler, so I don't know if I want to unwind, because it is the most memorable thing in this movie.
I think maybe we should save it for
It's an Art?
because that's when all the practical effects start coming in.
But she's also, she's unwinding a bit. There's the baby son. She's the one. Well, he's not literally baby, but you know, there's the like 6-7-year-old boy. Yeah.
And that kid is, I don't know exactly who he's played by, but I've seen him before, and he always plays like the weird kid, like the stare off into space kid.
Is he in? He's in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Maybe?
Yes.
Haunting of Hill House.
Yep, that's what he's in. That's most memorable for me, and he kind of plays the same type of character.
Yeah, the youngest brother gets really like taken with the color. He gets obsessed with the well. The color starts seeping into the well, and it poisons the water. And the boy spends a lot of time in the movie just staring at the well, and he's like, "Listen, it'll whistle for me." And he's just kind of zoned out and very catatonic. And
some eerie stuff though, those scenes. I would say that the oldest siblings in this were nothing to write home about, performance wise. The girl kind of irritated the shit out of me. She's supposed to be she's like a Wiccan, I guess. She does rituals in the woods, and she's kind of like a sarcastic asshole to everybody. And she's just not very likable.
They have the thing which is supposed to like be cute, I think, where the two oldest siblings just call each other names, like endearingly, I guess.
Yeah, they're like Dick Muncher and stuff, shit like that. But
like, shut up, shit face.
Yeah.
But they do it with love, I guess. The big brother, I think, got the most shafted by the storyline, because like the most interesting thing that we don't see is when the big brother's like, I was trying to put the alpacas away and I just got like lost for hours. And I couldn't figure out like what was happening, and I couldn't get back to the like. That's one of those like dream-like things, like, you know, when you're in a dream and you just there's something right there, but for some reason you can never get to it.
Right.
You know, like that's something that I wanted to see shown on the screen.
And that's scary to me. That
Yeah.
stuff like missing time, like that's scary. So and it's he had the most lame kill though, or death in the movie.
Yeah, that was really abrupt.
Yeah, him and the sheriff guy who just shows up for 5 minutes
Yeah, to
had the
get
lamest kill. or
shoinked
deaths.
out of the movie.
Yeah, literally. There's also a hydrolyst in this, or a character that plays a hydrolyst. And if I don't know if you recognize this actor, but he was in a COD campaign.
Really?
He was in the Modern Warfare remake from 2019.
Oh, I never played that campaign.
I think he played Soap, if I'm correct. Yeah, he was fine. He had some good moments, and he was the one that was doing the monologues.
And you said you listened to the audiobook
Yes.
for the original story. He's like the main character of the original story. He's this guy that investigates and kind of stumbles upon the aftermath of his family, right?
Yeah, and he notices something is infecting the water in whatever town they're in. And actually that goes into more depth in the book, where it's actually more of a bigger deal about the water aspect, where it's not only affecting this family, but it's affecting everything surrounding the area. I guess in the movie too, they do there's some scenes where it's like the animals are being affected and different things like that, but it's more so in depth in the book, obviously. But
Yeah. The end kind of is like focused on the water. They're focused on the one, and then the end is like him staring into the dammed off basin.
yeah,
And staring at the water and being like the family, whatever, things went bad, and I still won't drink the water.
I still won't drink the water in the strange times.
Yeah, yeah.
There are only a few of us that remember the strange days now. What touched this place cannot be quantified or understood by human science. It was just a color out of space. A messenger from realms whose existence stuns the brain and numbs us with the gulfs that it throws open before our frenzied eyes.
He's all right, and then we can't forget, which is one of those. This is one of those I didn't know I needed this. Like when I showed you Marshawn Lynch a couple episodes ago in the Bottoms movie. It's like you don't think Lovecraft horror and then think everybody's favorite stoner, Tommy Chong.
Yeah, right.
But Tommy Chong is in this movie as just like a squatter that lives in a shack on their land.
Yeah.
And he's just like, hey, man, I like dropping acid and hanging in my apartment.
You want some of this? He wasn't calling it hooch or whatever, but it's like he kept drinking the water.
Yeah.
And they're like, it tastes fine to me.
But he's interesting.
He had the creepiest stuff in the movie, I think, towards the end.
Yeah. Yeah. He seems like it gets towards the end, time is really going out the window, too. And we really notice that going into Tommy Chong when we visit Tommy Chong's shack near the end of the movie.
Down in the rocks.
Ezra?
It lives in the world. It grew down there.
Ezra!
Poisoning everything. Changing everything into something like the world of Greenpool.
Or when he, do you remember when the second time the water guy visits Tommy Chong and he just has his ear to the ground? He's like, you can hear him talking. You can hear him talking down there.
Yeah.
He's fun. It's just, I just didn't expect Tommy Chong in this movie. It was like a little bonus. Like I showed up for Nick Cage, and then Tommy Chong's here too.
Yeah.
It's nice. Shall we move along to It's an Art Bro?
Let's do it.
What's this?
It's an art project.
Okay, I like it. Picasso. Yeah, that way.
It's an Art Bros where we talk about the specifics of the filmmaking process. We're talking sets, effects, lighting. So I just want to say maybe some of the peers, if you're not familiar with what a Lovecraft horror, maybe naming a few movies that have Lovecraftian horror elements might give you an idea if you want to watch this movie.
If you've even seen these movies, because they're all kind of obscure. So we talked about Annihilation.
Event Horizon.
Yep. Alien.
Alien, yeah. I would say The Thing even more is like a Lovecraftian horror. The Lighthouse,
yes,
on a little bit of a different note. And Sunshine, which is a movie you need to watch.
I haven't seen Sunshine.
It's really great. Very Event Horizon. Very just like space exploration.
Okay.
It's a good one. Got
Also,
Cillian Murphy.
Oh, really? Also, some obscure ones. The Void is like an obvious adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft. There's a lot of tentacles in that. Also, The Empty Man is a semi-recent film that came out. If you guys haven't seen The Empty Man, you should check it out.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of my favorite recent horror movies.
It kind of deals with like the occult aspect of H.P. Lovecraft stuff. Yeah. And because, I mean, the cult of like Cthulhu and all that kind of stuff, it's a big part of his books. So it kind of deals with that kind of stuff or something similar.
Yeah. So in this movie, because it's meant to be about a color out of space. It's a color that's not even like on Earth, like it's an unearthly color. Now you cannot render that in film.
Right.
Movie magic has not gotten that far. So their choice was magenta because magenta's not a real color.
No.
It doesn't exist on the color spectrum. It is a mix of blue and red that like stuff in our eyes and our brain changes it to this magenta color.
Right. And actually the sky is like a magenta color. Like our atmosphere is like that color, but we just can't see that just because of our whatever's going on with our eyeballs.
So, I don't know. What do you think of that choice? Like, I like it. I mean, you have to make a choice there, and I feel like there are problems with the effects, and there are problems with elements of the horror, but there's also some really great stuff, I think, too. Which is why I think this is an interesting movie, even if it's not spoilers, but it's far from a perfect movie.
I think stylistically it was a good choice just to kind of have a color that really stands out.
Mm-hmm. I love this scene where it's nighttime and the boy, you kind of see it like he's just staring off into the color and you see it kind of like go through his glasses and he's shooting him from behind and the dog sitting next to him and he's just sitting there growling and getting mad.
I think Annihilation kind of did this concept a little bit better where it was like it wasn't a distinct color. It was more so a culmination of different colors. It was just kind of like it was almost like translucent in a way. It's really hard to explain.
If you've ever blown a bubble, it kind of looked like that bubbly film was over everything and warping everything.
Yeah. But I think stylistically it was pretty cool. Some of the effects are really funky. Especially towards the end there when we start getting more of shit popping off. I'm thinking specifically the scene where we go to the one guy's cabin and it looks like a direct-to-Sci-Fi Channel kind of thing where it just kind of looks bad. There's just some moments where it looks like they actually have a spotlight camera just kind of shooting directly onto the people, and it just doesn't look really good.
It feels like... That's the one aspect where I'm like, I wonder if a director that hadn't quit directing for 30 years might be able to like whip these effects together a little more seamlessly.
Right.
I give it a little more just knowing that it's a small budget movie. I guess I'm a little more like lenient on like a bad effect where I'm like, I'll give you more credit for the attempt or the idea than like how the effect turned out.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I like a lot of the ideas in this movie, but yeah, some of the effects are like, it's almost so bad it's laughable. There's a couple that are like, it's like, it kind of yanks you out of the moment because like, I'm thinking particularly when things get really crazy towards the end, there's a couple like freeze frame moments where people start like literally just evaporating into atoms, and the effect for that is like really terrible.
But I thought the effect, I kind of had some issues with, so when our hydrolysis character looks into the eyes of the girl as she's kind of like fully possessed by this entity or whatever thing is going on, and he kind of sees into this different dimension, and it was a bunch of tentacles and stuff. It was weird. I mean, it was straight out of H.P. Lovecraft, obviously, but it looked kind of funky. It just didn't. I don't know.
Another kind of
it looked really cheap.
Lovecraftian acid trip type movie is it's one of Mandy It's Mandy's director's previous one. It's called Beyond the Black Rainbow, and it has a moment where a man drops acid, loses his mind, and like peers into the void, kind of in the same way.
Okay.
And when you peer into the void, it always looks like a death metal album.
Yeah,
cover, you
yeah,
know?
like a Metallica album.
Because there's like that one shot with all like the skulls and the like blazed orange sunset and stuff. All that stuff I thought looked cool, but yeah, some of the like literally the quality of the effect is a little like, all right. Not great.
Which is fine. It's forgivable. And also, too, if you're thinking about just the concept of it, it's just something that we can't comprehend with our human brain. So kind of like that aspect of like, I don't even know what I'm looking at in the first place. How do I not know that this is just what it looks like to begin with? But that's just me kind of overthinking that concept. But I think it works in service. I don't know if you had anything else, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the influences that I noticed in this. There's some Stanley Kubrick stuff going on. There's also some Sam Raimi shit.
Mm-hmm.
Stanley Kubrick, there's obviously like an homage to the dog scene in The Thing with the alpacas, where they kind of all get conjoined together. Full spoilers, by the way. And it was grotesque and disgusting, and the close-up shots with their eyes, like alpacas have really fucking weird eyes to begin with, so it was really eerie.
Yeah, and it's this like animatronic puppet or whatever, and they're all just bleeding and sound like they're in major pain. And then I think the other standout effect, which this is a big spoiler, about halfway through this movie, we lose two of our main characters because they go out to see what's happening in the barn, and then the color just like shoots out in a beam out of this barn, and the mom and the smallest child just get like fused together back to back in this like grotesque, disgusting, like they just look like they've been chemical burned and they're all warped, and just the baby's attached in the back and it's just crying, and the mom's just like drooling and just like catatonic.
Yeah, that scene was pretty disturbing.
And then the next like 30 minutes of the movie is, what do we do with this now?
Yeah.
And that's like the most effective part. It's like when the daughter and it's like the oldest daughter and son are just standing there like, what the fuck? And like Nick Cage is losing his mind, and like
he's trying to rationalize it, and he's trying to like tell everybody it's going to be okay and that they're going to get this fixed. And
it's like, no, it's not.
No.
There's no coming back from this.
No. And I think the sound really worked in favor of that scene. Just like hearing the kid like in pain. It was so disturbing. Yeah.
It's one of the most like one of those images that sears into your brain.
Yeah.
It's like very memorable, and the first half of this movie I don't think hints that it's going to go that far.
No.
And then it just does immediately. Like there's no like build up. It's like this is the most hideous thing that's going to happen.
It actually sets itself up as like almost like a UFO type of movie, or like an alien invasion kind of thing, or even like spooky house in the woods, family poltergeist activity. I could see people going into this and then being like, what the fuck am I watching? You know what I mean? Like,
it sets up for more of a slow escalation, and then it just slaps you in the face. I love this scene. So they carry this weird morph body to the attic, and then there's this scene where Nick Cage he goes out and he shoots all the alpacas, and then he decides he's going to come in and put them out of their misery too with his shotgun. And then he's like saying goodbye to his wife, and he kisses her one last time, and then you see like a little magenta like just line of spit attached to his face, and then his mind completely flips, and he's like, nope, we're going to fix this.
Yeah. We're going to go on that trip that we always talked about.
And I just love the flip that he does. I just love how this movie deals with the unwinding of the minds. Like, it's better than, maybe not as good as like Annihilation, but it's better than like Event Horizon,
right?
In that aspect, where it's just like, I think it really captures in a way a lot of movies I haven't seen, or like the closest I'd say is like maybe The Lighthouse or like something like that. Just the total like unwinding of your just people can't think. Like, nobody can complete the plans that they're trying to do. The kids try to leave. And then the son's like, I gotta, the well, the color speaks to him. He just jumps down the well. He's like, I gotta do it.
Yeah. It's not like things are grabbing them and pulling them in. It's like their mind is just telling them, oh, I need to go back for this. Like, it's like being in a dream. Like,
yeah, they're just like too frenzied and scatterbrained to ever complete a thing except whatever the color is willing them to do.
That's horror.
Yeah.
That's fucking scary.
Some of the effects towards the end are a little hit or miss, but I love the idea. So like things are completely unwinding at the end. Nick Cage dies, And then the water scientist goes out to try to find Tommy Chong with the sheriff, and Tommy Chong is just like a mummy sitting in his chair with like a recording of his like ramblings playing over and over again. Lights are just flashing all over the place. Like it's clear like time has changed because he shouldn't have mummified in however much time the outside.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it's been a few days to an outsider, but in here, you know, the tomatoes grew
for 100 years.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah. And then the scientist goes back to the house, and then the sheriff gets offed in the other worst effect of the movie, where a tree just the trees start just moving. Like the trees get warped. And there's a really beautiful shot where Nick Cage, his car doesn't start. He yells cocksucker 20 times.
Yeah.
He gets out, and then he just kind of gazes into the sunset, and it's just this beautiful, it looks like a painting.
You fucking cocksucker! You cocksucker! You cocksucker! Ah, 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 ah,
Just like the magenta colors infected everything. There's like magenta flowers everywhere. There's blooming in the trees.
There's insects.
Yeah. But the water scientist gets back in the house, and like Nick Cage is reanimated, and there's like you hear conversations that happened earlier in the movie replaying, and there's just like shadows everywhere, and it's like all of time that we've seen is just collapsing in on itself, and everything's just folding in. And like they do this like smear effect, like if you've ever caught someone running through a picture.
Yeah.
Like the man trying to walk around, they're just kind of like smearing across the screen, and it
was super cool. I love that. And I think another thing that really elevates this film too is the music, which is like synth wavy kind of pounding stuff. It's really like adds to the like ethereal feel of it.
For sure.
It's pretty cool.
It's well designed, even if a few of the particular computer effects are kind of just like.
It's forgivable though, especially if you consider the budget. And everything.
There's the scene where you were talking about where the daughter like gets taken over by the color, and eventually she just like bursts into a million pieces. The effect where she bursts in a million pieces is really bad, and also like there's supposed to be all this like, you know, grass and stuff flying around, but it's clearly like a flat effect that's just being repeated over and over again.
Of the flies scene from Hereditary.
Yeah,
it was just like,
why is this effect so bad?
Yeah, it looked terrible. You didn't really even need that, honestly.
But you could have just done without, and it wouldn't have been as distracting.
Yeah, just turn some fans on, make it look windy.
Yeah. Everything kind of erupts, and our water scientist crawls out of the basement because he went and hid in the basement, and it looks like a nuclear bomb went off. It's just like white dust.
It's just a wasteland. Yeah.
And then he has his final lines. Still won't drink the water.
Still won't drink the water. It was just a color out of space.
Fucked everyone up.
Yeah.
Just a color.
He was like, it's nothing that can be explained by natural science. It was just a color. That's pretty cool. That's actually a line from the book too.
Yeah, I thought maybe his beginning and ending lines must have been ripped straight from the book.
Yeah.
Shall we move along to, hey, what are you trying to say?
Sorry, Okay, well, I thought we put a double-breasted on you because it would look nicer, I think.
What are you saying? Are you saying double-breasted because I should be wearing some milk duds or something? Because I happen to weigh a little more when I was younger and then lost some weight that I'm a little stretchy in the nipple area, and so that my breasts flap like two large wind socks flapping in the wind even though there's no wind, and I should have something to keep my breasts in so they don't burst out and poke people's eyes out? Is that what you're trying to say?
I'm just saying they're on sale this week.
Really? How much? How much are they? $38.99. Okay, well.
Okay, so here's where we're going to say H.P. Lovecraft was a big racist.
He was trying to say black people are bad.
Apparently he recanted some of this later in life. I don't really care. I think it's really they named the water scientist character after him and casted a black man, which I think was just like a little middle finger to Lovecraft, which I like.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't think that has a lot to say. I think his other more occult stories are the ones that are more tied to like his fear of other cultures and like the color is like so bizarre. I don't think you really tie that to like a racism thing, which I think is why part of why Richard Stanley chose this one to adapt. He says that in one interview where it's just like it doesn't have that stink on it as much just because the concept is so out there.
Right.
That's all I really have to say in the what's it trying to say. This movie doesn't have like a big it does actually have a bit of like an environmentalism statement with the way that the meteor seeps into the water and the water affects everything. It's like save the water.
This is actually a documentary about the Flint, Michigan crisis.
Yeah. It's exactly like that, except for all the details.
I don't know. Maybe sons and mothers get conjoined in Flint. I don't know.
Is that what happened when you drank too much lead in your water?
Maybe.
You're just drinking brown water. All right, shall we move along to Let the Hate Flow Through You?
Good. Use your aggressive feelings, boy. Let the hate flow through you.
Yeah, I have some little nitpicks here and there, especially with like anything involving like the outside town. Like just the people in the town are just fucking assholes for no reason. It kind of like it was almost like cynical in that aspect where it's like when the reporters came to interview Nick Cage, they're like changing his story around, saying it was like a UFO crash, and they're like asking him if he was sober when this happened. It was just kind of like, why do we really need this? It really doesn't do anything in service of the story, especially because no other townspeople really come around. And then I named the mayor Mayor PMS lip injection because she was so pissy for no reason. Like every scene she's in, she's like in such a hurry and she's really like an asshole to people.
Isn't it because she wants to cover up this thing and the potential that the water's poisoned because there was some like big deal that she wanted to push through?
If that happened, I don't know, because I didn't really care for her character because she didn't show up.
I think that's the case because that's why the hydrologist, that's hard to say right now for me for some reason, but that's why he shows up. He's prepping for whatever this like expansion or whatever, if they're going to start using the reservoir to give water to the town or whatever it is. So that's why I think she's pissy, but yeah, also not a very important part of the movie. We don't spend a lot of time.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of felt like it was almost unnecessary. You didn't really even need that aspect. You could have just had this guy come in just because that's his job. I don't know. You didn't need that, I don't think.
I do love like the actual interview of Nick Cage. Sounds insane. Like,
yeah.
Like he's already being affected by the color because he's also drinks a lot.
Yeah. And he's like smelling this scent that nobody else can pick up,
which is like a sort of like an alien abduction thing where like people start feeling really like smelling really strong smells that aren't really there. But because he's constantly putting ice in his whiskey, in his scotch, and as you see, like they do lots of close-ups of the ice, and it gets like more and more magenta the more like the waters. And I do love the way they separate the parents for a little bit, and they go to town. And the kids just go and like lose their minds by themselves, and then they come back and they're like, "What the fuck is going on?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "We literally cannot explain." Like,
right.
I love that trope in movies. There's a couple others where it's like people ask what's going on, you're like, "I can't tell you." Like the words do not exist.
Right.
If I said it, you wouldn't believe me.
And then just some kind of minor issues with the daughter character. I just thought she was kind of irritating. And I was kind of worried at the start of this movie because she was doing this ritual thing in the woods. And I was like, oh, please, I hope it's not like she contacts something and something comes.
Yeah.
Because I thought that would have been like, that totally blows the whole cosmic horror element out of there. Because it's like, that's something you can explain for why this is happening.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that they didn't do that. And they didn't, which was good. At least I think they didn't.
Yeah, she does a whole demonic ritual to try to get some help.
Right.
When she like brings out the Book of the Dead.
The Necronomicon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work. Doesn't do anything.
No.
But I guess shows how desperate she was, because what else are you going to do when your mom and baby brother are just bleeding and conjoined?
I'm going to cut myself and do rituals.
I suppose.
I mean, I guess that's probably one of the most logical things they did in this movie. Also, it's kind of like that whole trope of like, I need to leave this town. I need to get out of here. And then there's some lines of like Nick Cage talking to his wife. He was like, yeah, can't believe we're in the big city for so long, and we came out here and got my dad's farm. And
It's clear everybody fucking hates the farm except for Nick Cage.
yeah. He's like, this is the shit.
Except for maybe the Stoner brother, just because he doesn't have enough like will to care.
Right.
He's like, whatever, I got my computer.
He's got his pot. He's good.
And I got my pot. That's all I really need.
But yeah, these are all minor nitpicks. Yeah, I actually think the movie was kind of great. Yeah, this is my first time viewing it too. So
shall we move along to? Is this a perfect movie?
You lost a baby brother. Perfect in every way.
I had a baby brother. I had a little baby brother. And he was perfect. Perfect in every way.
What do you think, Kalen?
I'm inclined to say no.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think if this had maybe a slightly bigger budget and maybe all those effects got ironed out and like the vision was fully there on the screen instead of me having to give it a little credit, like, I see what you're doing.
I think maybe one thing I didn't mention and let the hate flow through was kind of the pacing. It kind of moved too fast. And I almost wish we kind of had more time to kind of like feel what these characters are going through. Because it's kind of like as soon as The Rock lands, I mean, they're kind of starting to lose their minds already. And I mean, that's fine. But also, I think it would be more effective for the viewer if we get more time with these characters and to really like feel that family dynamic. And then also it's like things are slowly starting to unravel. That's just a personal kind
And I
of thing.
wonder if we have that one line from the brother where he's like, I got lost between the barn and here and I couldn't get back and I lost hours of time.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a scene that was shot or was in the script and didn't happen.
Right.
Or if that's like, you know, if it was cut for time or whatever. I do wish that there's some times where like when the brother jumps down the well, there's some times where it needed to just expand within the scene, like let it breathe a little longer. He needed to like, you know, just like the little brother was staring at the well earlier. He needed to just like zone out and be like, wait, you know, maybe a little more like catatonic, like just like I need to go there.
Or maybe like you're thinking like the Nick Cage and his wife when they're kind of arguing. You stick on that scene for a little bit and then it's like it's daytime. And then it's like when they're done with the scene, they walk outside. It's like the middle of the night. You know, shit like that. Little things like that could really elevate the ethereal feel of it.
And Richard Stanley does talk about he wanted the first like 30 minutes to be really safe so you were more shocked at the end. But a lot of the dialogue, I think, in those like family scenes feels like an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as a compliment, where
Yeah.
it's like everybody's just a little like, what are you doing? And like Nick Cage, he can pull off this like unnatural dialogue, but all these other actors, you know, feel a little like, you know, out of place doing it.
Especially when you're like giving your characters like these little quirks and stuff. Like I'm thinking like the oldest brother, he's like really into watching NASA feeds for whatever reason, and that's not really explained. It's not like he wants to become like a engineer or something. You know, it's just like little things like that where it's like, okay, well, why does he like to watch these things and
right.
like, you know, different stuff. And then even like the daughter character being a witch is kind of sidelined too. You don't really get any kind of explanation for why she does this, you know?
Pun intended. It's just a little color for her character. It's just like this is a detail.
Yeah.
She's a witch.
But then it's like, why did you need that for
Yeah.
her? Did you just need that so you can have excuse for her to cut herself?
I
and
think
do
that's
rituals?
just a Richard Stanley thing since he was literally raised by a witch.
I guess. Yeah, well, now that you mentioned that, I guess that explains it.
I didn't know that
a
at the
little bit.
time, but I think he just has a... He also talks about in the documentary that before his meeting with Brando, because he heard from all the suits that Brando's annoyed that you even want to meet with him. Because originally he was just supposed to be the screenwriter and somebody else was going to direct.
Okay.
They're going to hire someone to direct. Then he meets with Brando and it goes well. And in the meantime, he'd contacted some like witch friend of his and he was like, do a ritual while I'm in this Brando meeting because I want to do it well. I want it to go well.
She must have botched that ritual.
Well,
or
he's like, the
something.
meeting went well. I left, and Brando was like, you need to be the director.
Oh, wow.
But then everything after that fell apart. He got sent off the project even before Brando got there.
Okay.
Once it was time to even film it. Anyways. Yeah. No, I agree. Not a perfect movie. A good one.
Would you say Purgatory? I don't think I would even put it in that.
No, it's not a purgatory movie. It's a good one, but it has some very obvious flaws. I think
For
watched
sure.
it the second time. It has some very high highs and some very like low lows, I think.
Yeah.
I could have used 3 more Tommy Chong scenes.
Well, as far as H.P. Lovecraft adaptions, I wish that we got more.
I think this is one of the better one of those.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's such a interesting genre that should be exploited more in film, especially now just because we have the technology for it. If a bigger studio like A24, I mean, they already kind of did this with The Lighthouse. If A24 got, the right director, and actually, you know what? Guillermo del Toro was supposed to direct Into the Mountain of Madness.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to star Tom Cruise and a handful of other people, but that also went through like development hell. But I think he might pick it up again sometime.
Richard Stanley allegedly is supposed to be doing a Dunwich Horror adaptation, which
Okay.
I think is another Lovecraft. But what I will say, as far as Nick Cageuary goes, that this is a movie that understands the superpower of Nick Cage and harnessed it correctly.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a gimmick. It wasn't just for the meme. It wasn't the bees.
Yeah.
It was like Nick Cage was perfect for this part.
For sure.
Because he can go hard.
Yeah.
And go far and swing too hard and ratchet it up. If the scale goes from 1 to 10, we're at 28.
Yeah.
And just
He knows how to harness that weird factor.
and he doesn't
feel natural.
Yeah, and have it feel natural, and it doesn't I often laugh, but I'm like, I just love this.
Yeah.
Going
Yeah.
on, but it doesn't break the movie for me. I'm just I'm enjoying Nick Cage.
Like him saying "slam dunk" while throwing tomatoes in a trash can. Like if any other actor did that, it'd be like, what the fuck? But it's Nick Cage, so.
Or it was soon after because the baby brother disappears and the mom and dad come back because mom cuts her finger, and they go to the hospital and they come back and the kids have unwinded while at home, and the baby brother's missing, and the way he's speaking, because he goes into that dad accent, and he's like, I don't give a fuck. Now go inside the fucking house.
I thought for a second he was going to say China. China.
Yeah, Donald Trump impression is pretty close to.
Well, I got one thing that kind of irritated me a little bit. I think there was just this level of concern that wasn't there for any of the characters. This is something I kind of forgot to mention. But then again, it's these characters are kind of all going insane to begin with.
I feel like it's because the color, they'll have moments of clarity, and then it goes off.
But I feel like maybe to I don't know, to ramp up tension.
Yeah.
It's we should be more what the fuck is this? You know what I'm saying?
I think that's what the hydrogenous character is for. Because remember when he shows up and the daughter's like, yeah, I don't feel so great, and he's like, what is happening? What
and
is
then
going
he sees
on?
the son or the little kid just staring off. He's like, what are you doing, buddy? And he's like, talking to my friends. He's like, okay.
Yeah. So not a perfect movie.
Highly recommend though.
Recommend it, especially if you're under any of those movies we listed to compare it to.
Yeah,
interested
great
you?
sci-fi. Yeah.
Check it out. So next week we will be reviewing my favorite filmmaker's Nick Cage movie, Raising Arizona.
By the Coen brother, or one of the Coen brothers.
It's both of them.
Both of them?
They don't. I don't think they usually share directing credits, so it's directed by Joel, produced by Ethan.
Okay.
But they're collaborated. So that'll be next week. See you then.
Peace.
Where's Sam?
They must have got him.
They? What the fuck are you talking about?
they, them, it, that thing that has been fucking this place up. I mean, come on, Dad, don't pretend that you haven't noticed.
Nothing has been fucking this place up.
Why are you so in denial?
Okay, you know, I've had it with your drama, Lavinia. So do me a favor and get the fuck out of my sight, okay? No, actually, I'll save you the trouble and get the fuck out of yours.